Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. So in this one we're going to look at my team selection ahead of game week 11. I had 2 free transfers going into this game week. I have already made 1 transfer though, as the thumbnail may suggest. So we'll be going through my decision making on that and just a general overview of how the team is shaping up. I've also got a bit of a tinkering session with planfpl.com at the end of the video as well, just to showcase my thoughts over the next few weeks, of course with the all-important blank game week coming up in game week 12 as well, so that we can plan around that essentially. So let's have a look at how the team is shaping up then for this week. So defensive line at the moment, we've got Guaita in goal, James, Cancelo and Trippier as my back 3. I'm pretty confident in at least a couple of these individuals, to be honest. I mean, I could start James Justin ahead of Trippier. He's actually on the bench for me, so I can bring him in. But I think really Palace have probably got something in them to be able to essentially make Leicester concede, right? So I'm kind of backing that Trippier has a much more attacking threat and output overall as opposed to James Justin. So I'm not essentially banking a clean sheet here with Trippier once again. It's more about, as we've seen in so many weeks already, what he can do from a set-piece delivery and a bonus racking up perspective. So I think really there's no massive decision other than really, like I say, James Justin to come in. But I think Trippier makes the cut there. Cancelo, again, I don't think there's any real troubles in selecting him. I do anticipate that Liverpool may score against Cancelo, or Manchester City, should I say. However, with the loss of Diaz, it does mean that maybe someone like Bobby Firmino and Jota get a little bit more minutes, and of course with the loss of Trent Alexander-Arnold as well, you'd suspect that Gomez is probably going to play a lot deeper than what Trent tends to do in terms of that fullback position. So I don't anticipate as much creativity coming from Liverpool unless really they control the midfield. But City are just so dominant in that area. I think that he's again a no-brainer that just you're not banking really on the clean sheet here. You're really kind of only supporting the fact that his attacking returns are quite likely. So very happy to own him. And then finally, Reece James. Disappointing that we didn't get to see him in the Wolves fixture for the entirety. As we know, that was a clean sheet there. And to be honest, that was many reasons why I think a lot of managers brought in, or the main reason why they brought him in on the Game Week 9 wildcard, was essentially because the run of fixtures for him from a defensive output, as well as those all-important attacking returns, was a very well-balanced run. So not to feature in that game is a little bit disappointing, but I'm going to keep a close eye on the midweek fixtures and see how many minutes he gets. But I'm hoping that Graham Potter still plays a strong side against this Villa team, and again James features predominantly in that game. So again, maybe one to watch in terms of a removal from the team, or even just possible making sure the bench is in the right order to get the right cover. But yeah, ultimately I think he's still a very strong pick in that Chelsea backline. So moving into the midfield next, we can see we've got one change as mentioned, and that was Diaz down to Lisandro Trossard. Now, I think, to be honest, there was a couple of reasons why I've made that move early. Essentially, I in my live stream, I definitely said he wasn't necessarily someone that I would want to target. Of course, the fixture at the time for game week 10 wasn't exactly, let's say, favourable. He did score the hat-trick against Liverpool. He then played Spurs, and they proved maybe a little bit more difficult to break down, to be honest. I think Conte played a pretty much a masterclass in terms of what he does. But I do think that Brentford, as after conceding 5 goals to Newcastle, that's quite a good fixture to target. Although it is an away match, realistically, I think at his price point as well, he could quite easily be a placeholder for Martinelli come game week 13. So I thought, right, better to avoid the price drop from Diaz, which I did. He dropped from 8.1 to 8. So I did actually purchase him at 8.2 in the wild card. So I'd already lost a 0.1 million swing in terms of value. I wasn't prepared to take any more, and we know that he's out long term. So Trossard just fit the bill and made the most sense for me in terms of that transfer. It does mean, of course, that I'm booking in essentially a possible transfer with Martinelli. But of course, where I have so many other higher priced midfielders than him, if Trossard proves that he is, of course, showcasing a better form than, let's say, someone like Zaha, Maddison or Sterling, we can always change the tune a little bit and go for Martinelli through one of those instead. So next up then we've got Zaha. I think in terms of the Leeds fixture, again, I reviewed this in the breakdown video. I was anticipating a bit more of a return other than that one assist, but still very happy with his potential output in this Leicester fixture. And to be honest, the same goes for Maddison. I think, although I've got Guaita in goal against him, I think he can probably do well against this Palace side. And of course it is at the King Power Stadium. What I would say with Maddison, though, and I kind of, maybe this is more from the eye test perspective than statistically, but certainly when Vardy was playing, where Maddison hauled the 18 points, I think, to be honest, he was making the runs to essentially create the space for Maddison in that number 10 role. And I don't think Patson Daka does that as much as what Vardy does. So because of that threat that Vardy poses in behind in terms of that run, the defenders are always going to be kind of almost on that, that half turn or back foot slightly to cover and pick up the pace to chase him down, essentially. Daka's not really known for that. He's much more of, let's say, a poacher. The goals I've seen him score, some of them are, of course, don't take anything away, they're magnificent finishes, but he does seem to be hovering a lot more in the box rather than making runs. So, please let me know if you feel that that's not the case, or if you're a Leicester supporter, you've gone to watch the games, maybe you know more than me. But I do feel like Maddison really needs Vardy to free up his capabilities as a number 10, if I'm honest. So we'll see what he can do. But again, on set pieces, I feel like he poses enough threat in the next few fixtures to warrant a hold, even after that disappointing 1-pointer against Bournemouth. So then moving into Raheem Sterling, if I have any regrets on the wild card, this is probably one of them. I think, to be honest, I took maybe a bit too much of a punt on him. He didn't really showcase any level of form or anything like that, to be honest, prior to my picking of him. It was more so on the basis that I thought the fixtures benefited or would benefit him and Chelsea as a team. And obviously we saw the 3-0 victory at Wolves, but of course this man didn't feature at all, which I am disappointed with, to be honest. Villa is another, again, favourable fixture, as discussed with Reece James as well. I think there is potential there. It's just about essentially how many minutes this man gets in the midweek fixture against Milan. If he's obviously playing 90 minutes, it just becomes very, very difficult, I think, to justify holding him. But I have got the flexibility of a second free transfer if I feel the need to. But as mentioned, I have got a little bit of bench cover if he doesn't feature once again, and then I think most certainly he would be one to be on the out list for me from game week 12 onwards. So that's how the midfield is shaping up so far. And then finally we have the three forward positions here. We've got Mitrovic against Bournemouth. Now, hopefully he does recover. There has been some comments that essentially it wasn't the reason that he wasn't featured against West Ham was not actually to do with his foot, although that was, of course, the initial cause for the flag. There was actually a little bit of illness for him, which meant that's why he didn't travel. Now, the comments made were that he should be ready for the Bournemouth fixture. So again, we'll keep a close eye on the press conferences, but it may be a case this week that I'm more likely to play him and just make sure there's bench cover there rather than benching him, essentially like I did last week. Then, of course, again, no introduction required for this man, Erling Haaland. We'll touch on captaincy, of course, at the end of the video. But I just think that, yes, against Liverpool, we've already seen what they've done against Arsenal. Of course, they did score 2 goals but conceded 3. The clean sheets are just very hard to come by, I think, in this Liverpool squad at the moment. So I really do feel like that City can assert some dominance, and this man is going to be at the forefront of it again. He may even actually score more points against Liverpool than he did against Southampton. So I don't think really there's any reason to take the armband away for him. But again, we'll discuss that at the end of the video. And then finally, Ivan Toney. I think maybe I potentially went a little bit bandwagon on him after he scored that hat-trick. I still think as an FPL asset, because he scored the penalty against Newcastle, as controversial as it was, really, the fact is, from an FPL point of view, when he scores and his ability from free kicks and penalties is pretty much warrant enough to have him in the squad. There is some, I guess, doubt for me. There is plenty of upside, as mentioned there, but there is some doubt for me that he's going to return consistently. I think he's got Brighton, he's got Chelsea next in game week 12, so I think I have to hold on to him, really, as there's no obvious route for me to get him out. I can't really go to Kane yet because I've got Sterling in the mix, and with Diaz's injury, it meant I had to use a transfer on him, right? So I've only managed to free up a little bit more money. I think it's 1.3 million that I got from the Diaz to Trossard move. So 2.7 million leaves me in a bit of a precarious position. I don't feel like I want to take him out from a fixture against Brighton, as good as they are at the Amex. I think potentially he could do something. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I feel like it's a very strong squad overall. So still very, very happy with the structure of the team, and I'm hoping that there is no real late news that makes me need to use that second transfer. So finally, going into the bench and the captaincy. We've, as mentioned, I don't think there's any need whatsoever to be taking the armband away from that man, Erling Haaland. He's just showcasing too much talent and too much power in terms of his finishing prowess to warrant an armband on anybody else. I have currently got the vice captaincy on Mitrovic, though. Again, I think that's more just fixture related. I've got to keep an eye once again though on Haaland in this midweek fixture to see how many minutes he plays. But again, maybe the early warning signs that we were first thinking about for him in terms of Pep's comments, the fact that he's basically said that he's a young man and he can recover quickly, I really don't think that we're going to see too much rotation with him, especially with the form that he's in. I think Pep is going to support, although he is of course more interested in the team's success, he certainly is going to want this man to be breaking the records at the rate that he's doing so already in the Premier League. So I think that there's going to be a little bit less maybe risk for rotation than we may initially anticipated with Europe, but I still again want to keep a close eye on him, and I'd advise you do the same as well. And then finally the bench. So in the order, I may switch this up. I may play Andreas ahead of Justin in that first slot, just against Bournemouth. I feel like maybe he does something. He's pretty much guaranteed, I think, to be taking more set pieces now that there's some news that Willian has been injured. So I think, to be honest, he justifies maybe that first slot above Justin, as I do think that Palace will probably get past Leicester. And like I say, I think from his attacking point of view, if I did play him ahead of Trippier, I don't think he warrants enough threat for me as opposed to Trippier realistically. So that's how the team is shaping up. In terms of a summary for where I'm at, of course I did break this down a little bit further in the breakdown video, but the overall points I'm on are 573. In terms of rank, I'm probably about, I think as of livefpl.net's points tallies, if you like, for ranks, I think I'm about 25-30 points away from, let's say, the top 300k. So realistically, it's still a very condensed point at the moment, all the way from 100k to 1 million. And of course, only having used the wildcard chip, there are undoubtedly going to be people in those top 500k ranks that have used triple captains, that have used bench boosts, and we can obviously start skyrocketing even further later in the season, hopefully, and claw back some of those missing points. So I'm still happy relatively with the rank. I would have liked to have been inside the 1 mil now consistently, but it was only a couple of points. I think I'm something like 3 points away from 990k, let's say. So it's realistically nothing. Obviously, I've got planned no hits for this week. I've got 2.7 million in the bank, as mentioned, after selling Diaz and freeing up a little bit more money in bringing in Trossard, and my overall squad value of 99.1 million. So yeah, I'm pretty confident, like I say, with this squad still. I know on paper maybe there's a couple of tricky fixtures. I've got some players playing against other defences, but as was with the Brentford and Newcastle game, the ideal situation would essentially be that Guaita picks up some save points and potentially Maddison gets an attacking return to kind of counteract the wipeout of the clean sheet to some degree. Of course, yeah, if Justin, for example, does come on, then again, the same situation. If he can provide some kind of attacking return similar to Zaha, it doesn't really matter if we wipe out those clean sheets. So we'll see what happens. But as I mentioned, I think the bench order for me is probably going to be Andreas in that first slot as opposed to James Justin. So as mentioned, for the next part of the video, I've got here the planner that I use predominantly at planfpl.com. You can see here, this is my squad. This is how it's shaped up. Of course, you can see I've actually got 2 free transfers, but as I've put a new plan together, it's only registered that I have 1. So where it says the transfers in the left-hand side, there is actually 1 of 2 for the free transfers. Of course, you can now see that Trossard is in there against Brentford, so very, very happy, I think, to own him for the next couple of weeks. And as you can see, captain armband on Haaland. And we'll jump into the plans for game week 12. So I would have liked to have been able to bring in an Arsenal asset, I think, this week ahead of that Leeds fixture. But essentially, with Martinelli blanking specifically, I think in game week 12, he would have been the person that I would have liked to have targeted. But I just can't justify having 3 players that are blanking on the bench. It just makes things a little bit difficult. So really, I'm not going to be attacking game week 12 too much. I did want 2 free transfers going into it. So again, the planned transfer here is potentially bringing in Gahey for Nico Williams. Nico Williams looks like his minutes are being reduced. And although it is a relatively kind of, let's say, boring move, Wolves haven't really provided any dominance in terms of moving forward. So I feel like Gahey can more than likely provide us with a clean sheet. It does mean a double up on Palace defence, but it's realistically just another cheap defender to bring in, as opposed to let's say Andreas against Villa. And worst case scenario, if there are any rotation risks in this side, again for game week 12, at least I have one playing player. So realistically, game week 12 isn't going to be maybe a time for me to attack the fixtures. It's quite difficult to do that anyway, with 2 of the major teams and big players in the Premier League at the moment in City and Arsenal blanking. They're really kind of who the players that you want to target. That's where they're coming from, right? So that kind of leaves me in a position where I may only need to use one of the free transfers again in game week 12. And then moving into game week 13, this is where I can really attack the fixtures a little bit further. So Trossard actually plays, I think it is, Manchester City in game week 13. So maybe just a brief mention as well. I actually have put the captaincy armband on him against Forest at home. I think that's a really good fixture. Maddison could also take that as well with a favourable fixture against Leeds, but I don't necessarily feel like I would go with Zaha, Tony or Mitrovic. So I think he's possibly going to be the captaincy, which is one of the reasons why I brought him in this week. Even if he does get transferred out in 13, as we'll see now, I'm happy bringing him in if I feel like I'm going to be captaining him in game week 12. So as you can see here, it is a -8 on screen, but it would actually be a -4, as I would be rolling one of those free transfers again from 12 into 13, leaving me with 2 free transfers. So I'd attack this week essentially by downgrading Sterling when Chelsea play Manchester United, and bringing in Phil Foden for that wonderful run that City have all the way through to even the post-World Cup. Of course, bringing in Martinelli for Trossard, where we pick up Southampton and the Forest fixtures in those next 2 weeks. And then finally, we bring in the second premium that I think really, at this point in the season, he now is the clear standout for me as that second premium option in Harry Kane. So although, of course, he is flagged still here, he's 11.4 million currently, and I'll be bringing him in against Newcastle ahead of that Bournemouth fixture in game week 14. So you can see there's a little bit of leverage here for me, that I've got 0.2 in the bank. So if there are slight moves in money from Phil Foden and Martinelli, I should still be able to, or Harry Kane, I should still be able to get to this essential team in game week 13. The likelihood I feel that Foden and Martinelli are going to rise during game week 12 and beyond, I feel is quite low. I probably have to maybe make these decisions quite early on in the week though, just to make sure I catch any potential price rises ahead of this run. But realistically, by having that 0.2 in the bank, that's where the Gahey move felt comfortable for me, because I'm selling Nico Williams for 4 million. I'm having to spend 0.3 in getting that backup or that next defender for game week 12. But of course, as I say, with that little bit of leverage in game week 13, which you always want, it's very difficult to plan to use all of the money all of the time. And I just genuinely feel that a lot of people are going to be going for these City and Arsenal assets from game week 13 onwards. So I feel like I've got enough leverage, as mentioned, to really navigate the kind of transfers I've got planned. But we'll also just showcase, I have gone as far as game week 14 and beyond, but I might as well show that while I'm here. So, of course, yes, Anthony or Rashford would probably be somebody that I would like to target. Maddison plays Manchester City that week, and it's maybe not an ideal fixture to play him. I believe after that, though, he has got Everton and West Ham as showcased here, which aren't too bad, but I do like United's fixtures from 14 to 16. They play West Ham, Villa and Fulham respectively, and this man does seem to be doing the business, to be honest. So it's between him and Rashford, depending on whether I need the money moving forward or not. But that's where I feel like a Man United asset is probably going to be the favoured option for me. And the team just looks really strong at this point. I feel like, having a pretty solid bench in three free playing players there for extra cover. I feel like the value will probably do very well here with the likes of Phil Foden and Martinelli being brought in ahead of game week 13. I just feel like it's kind of, this is the way to go for me. Of course, things change. You know, I didn't plan to sell Diaz, for example, ahead of this City game after looking at Liverpool's fixtures from game week 12. But these things happen. You have to change your mind. You have to adapt to what's in front of you. So I like pre-planning to some degree. These aren't booked-in transfers by any shape or form, but it is probably the ideal team that I will be looking to get to. So yeah, hopefully guys, you find the content useful and that helps you in your decision making over these next few weeks. Of course, as mentioned, we've got that game week 12 blank to be navigating. So if you do hold those Arsenal and City assets, I did mention it in my live stream, my last live stream, and discussed it with the viewers there, that ultimately I feel like it could be a potential 10-man playing week, as you don't really want to be booking in so many transfers and taking minuses and hits just to field 11 players when essentially Arsenal and Man City's fixtures look so good from game week 13 onwards. So I wouldn't necessarily jump to selling them. I would hesitate maybe bringing them in though, like if you're in my position where you don't own any more than 2 or 3. But I think, yeah, ultimately you do need to pre-plan for these types of blanks. I probably will get asked the question as well. I will touch on chip usage. I don't necessarily feel like the free hit chip is going to be warranted just for that one fixture blank. So anybody that's looking to do that, I would say, again, just prefer to field 10 men if you have to. Bench your 3 assets from City and Arsenal respectively, with just maybe one of them on your starting 11 as the blank, and just roll into game week 13 with essentially a very, very strong squad from those 2 teams respectively. So again, I hope you find the advice and the content useful. If you are new to the channel, then please do consider subscribing to me. I've got a watch list coming up as well this week for game week 11, so please look out for that. And of course, if you enjoy the content, then smash that like button below. And yes, of course guys, there will be a live stream on Friday night to tinker and see what essentially I do with that second free transfer, if anything. So tune into that one with me guys, and I'll see you in the next video.